And we're live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Hour podcast. I'm here with Areti Iles. Such a pleasure to have you on here, Areti, and just kind of understand a little bit more. And we were speaking a little bit before we hit live, but you have such an interesting career, such an interesting life. Obviously, starting in Greece and then coming over to the UK and building the career you have today. Public speaker. We spoke about me attending one of your sessions, which was amazing. But for the people who don't know Areti, I mean, how would you introduce yourself if we were asking?
So thank you first of all for having me on, Howden. It's lovely to be here. Those that don't know Areti, who is Areti? So yes, I grew up in Athens in Greece. My accent always gives me away, I'm sure, to a certain extent. Although people think I'm from different countries all the time, which is fun. Always in the
Mhm.
Mediterranean somewhere.
Right.
So I at the where to start really. Let's start with my role and my job description because that's how
Mhm.
most people actually get to know me. So I'm head of delivery for a Microsoft partner here in the UK. And my background is in Microsoft Business Applications, particularly Dynamics 365 CE, more recently the Power Platform. And my passion at the moment is obviously artificial intelligence, but particularly around how are organizations adopting it and what do you need to look out for adoption and why can you not just throw some AI into an organization and hope for the best and why that's a very bad idea. That's kind of what my main focus is at the moment and what I speak about mostly. I've been in the IT space for over 15 years. So I started off as a IT support kind of systems manager person in facilities company, so very much as an end client of Microsoft, really. And I was a CRM system manager eventually, and I worked with a consultancy to build CRM, and that's where my passion for Dynamics grew from, really, and eventually ended up actually becoming a consultant, and then eventually became a solutions architect, and now I'm in the management of the delivery teams that run projects for the partner I work for, which is Telefonica Tech.
Mhm.
And it's been a lovely 15 plus years in the IT industry, more or less.
Yeah.
That's the general kind of the career journey for me in a way. But I also love the Microsoft community. I got involved with it a few years back. I started talking at conferences about customer voice, and not very loved topic, but I do love
Mhm.
customer voice. I think it's a great product. And I generally love surveys. My background's in marketing academically, so I love anything to do with kind of consumer insight. And it was really a case of just getting involved with the community, and I kind of got the community bug. I was living in London for a few years, but then I moved to Reading, and there wasn't really a user group where I was. So I
Mhm.
decided to start one, and that was over 2 years ago. So I ran the Reading user group as well with Fraser Deer and Tim Lung together. We're the Reading user group dream team. And yeah, and I tried to speak where they will have me, basically, about all things technology, AI, and women in tech as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I just have to put a notice here. If the people listening haven't attended your sessions, I highly recommend it. If you see it on the list, definitely one of my favorite that I've attended. I think I saw you in the London user group in December, I believe. And yeah, I will definitely dive into some of the topics and some of the questions I didn't get to ask there. Um, I mean, such an interesting transition. You mentioned your academic background is in marketing, moving into IT, and then eventually as a Power Platform consultant slash solutions architect or Dynamics at the time as well. And then now you're in more of a lead role. So how has that transition been for you? I guess is my question.
Yeah, it's been interesting because you have to use different skills at
Mm,
different roles and at different times. When I first became a consultant, I had to learn how to be a good one, how to actually ask the right questions, how to provide suggestions to the client that I had, how to lead the workshops, how to make sure I got enough information to build a system. A lot of consultancy has to do with learning to listen and ask the right questions and also provide support where needed. So not just wait for the client to know exactly what they want from the system, because that's never going to be the case, but learn how to ask questions and guide them in a way that you can actually get the requirements you need to build the system. So that in itself is a skill that I had to learn, definitely. L- Obviously, becoming a consultant and becoming a solution architect, eventually, a lot of it has to do with helping other people grow as well. So you are a consultant. You eventually, after a lot of experience, you become a senior consultant, And it's all about learning hard skills, but soft skills as well, because a lot of the time, as you grow and you lead a team of people working with a client or building a solution, you need to learn how to work with them, how to look after them, how to help them with their personal development. That isn't necessarily skills that you know before you go into that role and you become part of a bigger team. So that's important as well. And a leadership position is even more of a shift in that, because your technical skills don't matter as much because you're not building solutions anymore, but you're looking after the people that are doing the hard work on client sites with clients, with the system, with the projects, and it's about making sure that they have what they need to do their best every day. So that's a different skill altogether. And of course, there's elements of it that don't have anything to do with technical skills, and it's or soft skills. It's more business skills as well, because you're responsible for meeting with clients, prospective clients, looking through statements of work, making sure you raise all of the risks and assumptions, and doing a bit of a sales role as well. So all
Mm.
of that, there's been a bit of a progression in my roles that has meant that I have had to learn new skills, and that's kind of why I've gone for the roles as well, and why I've gone for the progression, because I get to a point after a few years where I'm very much in my comfort zone, and I do want a bit of a challenge and a bit of a growth space. I want to be learning to do new things. So that's why I'm in a career in technology, because things change all the time. So you have to be learning new things, but also from a soft skills and I call them essential skills. Really, people call them soft skills. I think they're essential skills.
Hmm.
From an essential skills perspective as well, I think it's just, for me, it's all about growing and trying new things. So I think I definitely landed in the right space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned that people call them soft skills, but you call them essential skills, which I absolutely agree with. And I was speaking to Mark Smith a few weeks ago, and he was telling me how soft skills are ironically the hardest skills to learn. The technical stuff is the easy stuff, more or less. So I guess my question, Areti, is how did you learn those skills? Was it just experience? Was it through books? Was it through speaking to people? Like, what do you kind of have to do to learn those skills? Because I feel like a lot of people in the tech space, including myself, definitely at the beginning, I'd say my technical skills were very good, but sometimes it'd be a bit more difficult to listen, ask the right questions, etc. So, how do you position yourself to excel in those roles?
It's a great question, really. I think different people will probably approach it differently. I think it depends on what you're already good at and what you need to grow and you're not so good at. When I was very young in my career, I was not particularly confident to speak up in meetings or ask questions or present even. I would get very nervous for sure. So public speaking is not something that came naturally to me. I really had to fight the nerves, and even to this
Hmm.
day I get a bit of a fight or flight response before I present, which is I'm overcoming.
Hmm.
But it's for me personally, I it was a combination of things that I used for different skills. I did, when I was looking at presenting and doing a bit more kind of organization facing presentations early in my career. I did a presentation course that taught you kind of the basics of presenting, how to be a good presenter, because I think there is an art to it and there's a skill to it. And I think the more you do it, the better you become. I think
Hmm.
presenting, for me at least, was a very practical thing. I had to do more of it and watch myself back or listen to myself back and find out where I was doing great things and where I wasn't doing such great things. So in that sense, I think listening to myself and watching myself, as cringeworthy as that is for me, it actually is a great way for me to learn and
Yeah.
improve. I don't like doing it, but that's exactly why I do it. I think that's, where there's the pain, there's the growth.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, that's kind of where it's at. And with other skills like communication, I think it's something that you need to get feedback on, really, to get better at. And sometimes, fall on your face, metaphorically, and do something wrong or miscommunicate with someone or offend someone when you didn't mean to, and then
Mm.
learn from that and go, you know what, actually, yeah, that's sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. I know you perceived it that way, and I get that. I didn't mean for you to take it that way. And you learn from those mistakes as well. So I think definitely for me, it's been a bit of trial and error, learning from my mistakes and kind of metaphorically or literally watching myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hate doing that. And I have a couple of courses and I edited them both. And it probably took me a month or so to edit, and it was probably the worst month of my life. I hate listening to myself back, but like you say, I think it's really good to listen to yourself back, see where you can be better, kind of assess it. It's interesting that you took a presentation course. I mean, I've been looking to do one of those myself. I think, as you mentioned, it is an art in the sense of keeping people engaged, and I feel like even in this new, it's not so much a newer role, but the role you currently have, I'm sure that is your day-to-day work, keeping people engaged and, essentially listening to them so they can listen to you. And you mentioned IT is always changing. And speaking of things that are always changing and evolving, you have such a great stance on artificial intelligence. I believe it's a big part of your role. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's something that you're looking at every day. Um, how are you feeling about it, Areti? Where are you at with it after, it's been a couple years since the storm, a few years since the generative AI kind of exploded. I mean, where are we today?
So it's interesting that you asked the question, how are you feeling about it rather than how are you thinking about it?
Mm,
Because for me, artificial intelligence is one of those topics where we all have a lot of literally feelings for it, not just thoughts.
mm,
Um, it's I am overall very excited about it because I think the potential is incredible as to what can be achieved with it. But at the same time, it's a tool, but it's also a weapon. So I am very aware of the fact that it can be used for things that it shouldn't be, and that it can actually lead to very negative consequences, really,
mm,
in specific scenarios. Overall, I am feeling excited about it because I think once a geek, always a geek, and I think technology will always excite you, even if you realize that there's drawbacks. I think with artificial intelligence, it's one of those things where we call it a technology, but really it's a goal that we are trying to achieve with computer science, uh, to create a computer that is and thinks like a human. I don't know how far away we are from that at the moment. I think we will get there eventually for sure, where we won't, with a lot of the models at the moment, you can't tell the difference whether you're speaking to a human or a computer, and they're very good,
mm.
especially the voice elements of
Oh
it.
yeah,
I
love
talk
that.
to my co-pilot all the time. I call
I
it Chad
know
or
it's a
Brad,
bit sad.
one of
Yeah,
the
it's
two,
it's a
and
little bit sad, isn't
it's
it?
well, when you're lonely or if you want
Yeah,
advice, it's
agreed.
I like asking it really weird questions that other people might not ask it. I don't
Yeah,
use it, I don't use it for useful things. I just use it to actually try and have just a conversation,
yeah.
and it has its limits, right? You can't really get very far, but I think eventually you can actually literally have a conversation with it. And
Mm,
what effect will that have for people who are feeling lonely? That can have a positive effect. People that always want someone to talk to, or people that need therapy, but I think once we get to a point where the models are good enough to be trusted and used in a trustworthy way, because I think that's the main concerns we have at the moment, and rightly
mm,
so. I think once we get to the point where the the inconsistencies, the inaccuracies, the hallucinations are addressed, then I think we can actually end up with artificial intelligence really that is massively helpful.
mm,
It will have consequences, everything always does, but I think it's an exciting time really, because for my generation, it's we are I'm an 80s baby, so I have grown up in a world where there wasn't much World Wide Web internet stuff, and all we had was like humongous satellite phones when I was growing up. And then the internet came along, and we had computers everywhere and phones, and that evolved into where we are now, and now we've got artificial intelligence. So I feel like we are the first generation that knew what the world was like before lots of technology, and now
mm.
we're seeing what the world's like with huge amounts of technology. Um, and I just think I mean, I'm excited, and I kind of see it as a natural progression, because I'm thinking, well, yeah, we didn't have any, and now we have lots. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's like for someone that's 10 years old now, where all they've never known is technology existing. It must be a completely different perception of the world with artificial intelligence coming in as well.
Hmm.
I think we're going through a very exciting time, but I do worry about the fact that it's very early days. There's a lot of hype,
Mm,
and people, they are getting to a point now where we got very excited about AI. AI became not as good as we thought it was, not as ready as we thought it was. So people are now a bit like less enthusiastic about it. So it's kind of we're getting tired of it now, and it's
mm.
it's going through a standard curve of, you know, where all technology goes through, really. Everyone gets really excited at first, and then it dies off, and then eventually we go into a plateau of using it productively, and we know its limitations, we know its benefits, and then the next thing comes along, and off we go again. And I think at
Mm,
the moment we're in between two peaks. We've come down from the Gen AI peak, and there's gonna probably be another peak of something else coming up very soon that will get us all very excited. And then in between the positive peaks, we have negative peaks of things going wrong, or new cheaper models coming out in China. And oh my God, what is this going to mean for the technology companies? They're all going to, it's the AI race. Is it going to be? And it's like, oh, and then it dies again. And
yeah.
I think we'll just go through that for a few years while we're exploring what this really means for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned as well how, we can't even imagine how life would be like for a 10-year-old now growing up with this technology. My younger brothers are 16, and they're in high school and they're using it to study for their exams, and there's all these AI apps and all this cool stuff. And I remember I wasn't in high school too long ago, and I couldn't even imagine a reality. But I feel like I was in a very interesting point in my life when the AI boom happened. So I was 18, and I 18? No, I was 19, 20. And I was I was in one of my internships. So it was my first corporate role. And I remember it exploding, and ChatGPT came out and it became the most downloaded hit. And then I remember, probably my boss and a lot of bosses at the time went to their nearest kind of, coworkers and say, hey, why don't you check this thing out and just let me know what it does? So I had some experimentation with it. And then I went back to uni. And as I'm sure you know already, in university, ChatGPT is being absolutely used and abused everywhere, at every university from here to San Francisco. Um, so it was interesting. It was an interesting time to use that technology. I always thought it was super interesting that people thought it would go the other way. So people thought that when artificial intelligence would come, it would replace manual work, it would be robots, it would be self-driving cars. But it seemed like it got flipped on its head in a sense and kind of went for knowledge work and creative work and coding. How I mean, we work in the Power Platform and dynamic space. We can see Copilot giving changes every single day. Like I remember a few weeks ago logging into the model-driven apps and all of a sudden seeing a natural language search feature. I think most of all, a lot of people are anxious for their jobs, a lot of knowledge workers. So I guess what would you say to those people, those programmers, those juniors, those mid-levels, even Power Platform consultants and developers? Should we be worried for our jobs?
Maybe, I think
Mm,
is the answer, unfortunately. So it depends. Generally speaking, I think to come back a little bit at the beginning of your question, I think that we're using AI for the things that it's easier to use AI for. Things like manual labor, robotics. It's very hard to actually create a hardware solution that lives, breathes, works, moves um, independently without causing major issues. Although, like some of the videos from Boston Robotics, I just love watching. They're amazing. I love that they make like the robots dance. It's my favorite. So they have come a really long way, and I do think that eventually, with artificial intelligence built in as well, the really dangerous jobs physically should be done by robots because then that can save lives, literally. So why not? But I think it's a lot harder to combine software and hardware together, but we will get there. I think that's why we're using AI for what we're using it right now, which is through a computer still, because that's a lot easier to a certain extent, I think. Um, I think in terms of the kind of artificial intelligence and where we where we are with it right now, and is it actually gonna, you know, cause anyone to lose their job? Perhaps for some people, it will cause their job to disappear, but other jobs will potentially replace it. The question is, are they going to have the right skills and experience or be able to gain those skills and experience to go to alternative jobs? I think that's the question.
mm,
Depends on what jobs are being replaced and whether the new jobs coming up are actually jobs that those people can go for. So there's definitely an element of upskilling, the world changing, and people having to learn new skills if they can. The question is how much support can we give them and to help that transition. It's like with any new technology, though, when new technology comes in, old technologies disappear and those skills are no longer needed. So people have to learn new skills and they have to make an effort to learn new skills, but there needs to also be help for those people to learn those skills. So that's where a lot of work comes in from organizations, from the government, where skills are created to help people upskill and get used to the new reality. So there is an element of that. I think there are certain jobs that will change, but they won't be replaced. And our job as consultants is changing through the use of AI. What we now have to do, even within the platform to build solutions, is not the same as it was 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. So our job has to change. We have to upskill. We have to learn how to use AI within the solutions and how to configure it and how to control it and security that we need to put in place for it and policies and all sorts of things that need to come into place and how legislation is going to be addressed and how we manage that. There's a lot of things that we have ourselves got to upskill on and learn to continue to be really great at our jobs. If you're a consultant at the moment and you're not looking at any of that, you're going to get to a point where you're going to get left behind and you won't be able to be a good consultant to your client because they will be looking at this. They will be looking to implement it. They will be looking to understand what they can get out of it. So it is changing our jobs. It's changing our jobs more than anyone else's because we're in technology.
Yeah.
But it will eventually, I think, change the majority of jobs, if not all jobs. And some jobs will probably disappear, yes. And we will have to look at what that means for people and how we
Yeah.
can support them through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess respectfully, it always has been the case where technology does replace jobs and those jobs tend to evolve and as people learn new skills. And I'm definitely seeing what you're mentioning, coming into different roles and different companies. I can see it. I'll show them Power Apps, I'll show them Power Automate. I say, look at all this cool stuff. And they're like, oh, cool. But what can Copilot do? What can we do with Copilot Studio? What can we do with the M365 Copilot? And I can see myself having to learn these, and it's not becoming just something I want to do. It's becoming something I have to do. Um, you mentioned security, and I'm sure it's something you think a lot about, as I do as well. So you touched on it a little bit, but what keeps you up at night when it comes to the security around generative AI?
So it does keep me up at night. It's more I'm waiting for the news story of bad things happening or something
Mm,
really bad
mm,
happening. Um, the fact that we have artificial intelligence means that it can be used to attack itself. So it gets a bit meta really because if you look at the top um, technology security risks. We've got the ones we know and hate all the time, the spam attacks, the DDoS attacks, that the kind of traditional in a way now security threats. But then AI scams are starting to come along, and lots of malware related to AI or AI solutions where the data that they're being giving access to is being used for things that they shouldn't be used for, or AI solutions that are being put in place, but actually they are a way to get access to an organization's other systems and so on. So there's definitely, I think it's a bit of more of a long game that is being played from a security perspective with AI. I don't think there's that many people that are looking to break in the short term, but I think long term is where I'm looking at in terms of security and what implications will have for security. It's more rogue AI, really. AI being created and used for things that it shouldn't be used for. That's my concern. I mean, even the EU AI Act that's come into force, kind of staggered now. The first thing that it addresses in its first kind of wave of regulation is prohibited use AI, which I thought, well, that's interesting. If it's prohibited use, why are we regulating it? Because it
mm,
turns out that there's actually AI out there that is used for prohibited reasons, therefore it needs to be regulated. But actually, there's that realization and that acknowledgement that there is AI out there that's being used by certain people/groups that other people/groups should not be using it for. Therefore, let's let them use it, but let's regulate it. And we all agree that it's prohibited to use it that way, which is
mm,
very interesting to me. So there is a lot of things being done with it that we as a population, I'm sure we do not know that AI is being used in that way. I think it's regulation is one part of it, but I think to extend the EU AI Act has gone quite far in terms of the regulation around it to create secure solutions, right? That is at the end of the day what they're trying to do is control how it's used so that we don't have adverse outcomes from it. But I think in reality, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Um, First of all, for organizations to use it more and use it effectively. I think it's great that there is a regulation for it already. I feel like from an organization perspective, it's a lot very early, which is good and bad, I think. I just think we don't know, as with a lot of these things in some cases, we won't really know what it's being used for until it goes wrong, and then we
Mm,
know.
yeah.
I think some of the main concerns are around data and data security, as it's always been the case. And I think synthetic data coming in will probably take that risk away. I think in a few years, most models won't be using real data from a personalization perspective, an actual human being identified anyway. So I think that's going to take that risk away.
Mm.
But as the AI models develop, I think more risks are going to come in for sure.
Yeah, super interesting. There are a couple of things there which I'm not super educated on, but I'm sure you've educated yourself on them. The first one being the EU Act. So could you tell me a bit more about that? Do you know the implications of that? I feel like the EU has always been a little bit tighter with its laws in quite a few aspects. But what does this mean for big technology companies in San Francisco trying to bring their stuff here?
Well, actually, as it happens, it means less to big technology companies in San Francisco and more to organizations everywhere, because it's a bit of a different approach. So the EU AI Act, I looked into this because I was just intrigued by how can you regulate a technology that by itself is quite generative. So it creates it's not a traditional software system where you tell it how to behave and it behaves that way. AI has an element of creativity to it and unpredictability to it. So I was very interested to see what regulation is going to come in to try and control something that in itself is not very explicit in the way it works. So the EU AI Act is very interesting to me because first of all, it's not here's a date, everyone, and this is when the regulation applies from. It is done in stages. So they start with prohibited AI, which was back in February, and they are going all the way to August next year in 2026, where they are looking to implement the generic AI use case legislation. So it's going to come in waves, basically, which is why there's not much talk about it right now. But I think in the next kind of year there really will be, because organizations will need to start preparing for it. So there is a part of that is staggered. And that's from the lessons that the EU learned from GDPR, where GDPR suddenly came into force, everyone panicked, and there was a huge load of work that needed to be done. And they want to avoid that. So they're bringing it in nice and early to let you prepare. That's the good news. The bit where it is a little bit different to legislation there's actually two parts to it. It comes on top of any existing legislation around privacy, security, intellectual property, and all those things. So it's in addition to any existing EU laws. The main part to it, though, and the bit that will get everyone interested, is that it doesn't apply to those providing the technology. It applies to those implementing the technology.
Mm,
So if you are an organization and you're deciding to introduce, let's say, an AI model into your organization, or even Copilot, really, yes, the software provider has certain guidelines that they need to follow, and Microsoft has a whole, website on the EU AI Act and how they are addressing that in their software. But you, as the implementer of that technology, are the one responsible for making sure you are applying the regulation, and you are effectively compliant to that regulation. So that's where it's a little bit different, because the onus of you being in line with that is not with Microsoft, for example, or any technology provider. It's with the person implementing that technology, and that's where it's a bit different. So what you effectively need to do as an organization is start to have effectively an AI inventory of what you are using to make sure you are complying, and you're using it in the right way to comply with the regulation that's in place. So that in itself is going to be a bit interesting, because at the moment, a lot of organizations are not explicit in what AI can be used for, what AI can be used in terms of software and models, and also how are you supposed to use your own AI. So a lot of employees, anyone really, can install one AI solution or another on their phone, or even on their laptop in some cases, depends on how stringent your security controls are as a company. But there isn't any guidelines on that. Most organizations have no guidelines on what AI can be used, how it can be used, and why. So I think that's the bit where the AI Act is trying to make every organization accountable for creating those guidelines and having control of what AI solutions they use, because otherwise it's very difficult, I think, to control it, as different organizations will use the same thing for different things as well. So I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting one where it's going to get people thinking, why do we have these solutions? What actually do we want people to be able to do with these models? What data do we want them to use? And yeah, the bring your own AI thing is also another interesting dimension as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I asked this question to someone a few days ago that on the bring your own AI thing. Let's say I've got company data and I put that into ChatGPT, my own personal ChatGPT. Where are the risks in that, if any?
In your own kind of small language model locally, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but running it on the cloud, not running it on my machine.
Right. Um, it depends exactly where it is, I suppose, and depends on what data it is and whether
Mm,
you are worried about what happens if it just leaks out into the world. So
right.
I think the question is, it depends on whether you're happy for that data. Fundamentally, that is the question. It's really if you've created your own model and if you're using your own data, if that then becomes widely available, are you okay with that?
Mm,
What are the implications of that? To a certain extent, I think that's going to be a question everyone will need to answer, in the sense that there is a possibility for companies to start creating AI personas of their employees, for example. So there could be an Areti bot that looks and sounds like me, and someone can call it up and ask it a question, and it's got a knowledge base that it can use to answer any question that you give it.
mm,
What happens then if I leave my organization? Can they still keep my bot? And can they use my knowledge and experience? And what does that mean contractually? And what does that mean for any benefit they get out of it? Or if they, if they sell it, or if it's being used as, from a customer service representative, and they can use that as a service. It creates a whole load of questions around, if someone can take something and use it without you having any control on what this means, but it is yours fundamentally. How does that work? So it's the same. I
mm.
think it's the same question, really, whether it's ChatGPT or a model, or you've got your any kind of information that you have about yourself. It's a question of, would you be okay with that if you see someone else using it? Would you
Yeah.
be okay with it or not? It's an
Yeah.
interesting one.
No. It is an interesting one. It's something I actually haven't thought about before, but you know, contractors, freelancers, people with their own businesses, if companies are making AI versions of the knowledge that you bring, what kind of value do you bring? Who's to say that they can keep using that after you're gone? That is super interesting. And I think it gives us a good bridge into a topic I was really excited to speak to you about, which was adoption. I know you have a lot of kind of thoughts, and you project them very well in your presentations around AI adoption and kind of the stages of that. Um, what are some things that you found through your research and through your experiences? Like, is there like a set amount of steps people can do to adopt AI within their organizations? Because some organizations have been adopting AI for a long time, and I feel like others are getting very new to it. So how does that look for an organization starting from scratch and wanting to implement that technology?
So we're all adopting AI, whether we like it or not. The question is, are we
Mm,
adopting it well, or are we
right.
adopting it really badly, or somewhere in between, or amazingly? So if you're an organization that hasn't looked into AI yet, chances are someone's already using it in your organization. You just don't know about it, right? Shadow
Yeah.
AI is everywhere by now. So the first question, I think, has to be, is anyone actually using AI? And if so, what for, right? Because if you haven't looked into it yet, but people are using it already, it's an interesting question to ask, to figure out what the use cases for AI are. Because if someone is using AI already for something in their job, I think that's a great place to actually start and look at, what are they using it for, what was missing, and can you actually find something better for them, more secure, depending on the situation. So I think the first thing that you need to start with is, what problems do you have as a business that AI might be a good answer for? Because because sometimes organizations will go, just going to put AI everywhere because it's amazing, it's great, everyone thinks it's great, so I'll just throw it in. And I just think you cannot do that. Also, you cannot use AI to fix your data. If your data is rubbish, just putting AI in there to fix your data, that's not a thing. Let's just clear that up right now. You need to sort out your data. You need to be ready for AI models to be brought in. And if your data is rubbish, any AI model you bring in won't be as good as you need it to be. So fix your data first, I would say, and don't
Yeah.
use AI for that. That's not what AI is for. You can't even use it that way. Just don't. Um, so you need to make sure you're ready, and you need to make sure that you have a good reason to use it. A lot of companies, started saying, "Oh, we're an AI company now. Our aim is to use AI to serve our customers." And I'm thinking, well, that can't be the reason why your organization exists. Organizations exist for reasons that are not anything to do with the tools they use to provide what they exist for. So
Mm.
it's important to remember why the organization existed in the first place and how can AI help achieve that. AI can't be the business strategy. The business strategy must be something more than AI. So what is that, and how can AI help make that better, whether it's a service offering, a product, whatever the case might be. Um, and then it's about really having a plan for it. I think is the most important thing is knowing why you're going to use AI and having a plan for it long term, because AI solutions can be very expensive and there needs to be a financial plan around them, a business case that lasts for a number of years. A lot of AI is also new, so there needs to be a plan for how you're going to upgrade, maybe how you're going to change models as well, potentially in a couple of years, because it's moving so quickly that a solution, an AI solution you put in place now will evolve over time. So how will you deal with that? How are you going to upgrade it? How are you putting guidelines in place as well to review whether what you were using it for is still valid now, and return on investment as well. If you're going to put an AI solution in, know what problem you're trying to solve and go back and see whether it's actually helping you do that, which sometimes can be difficult with personal productivity AI as well. It can be very difficult to articulate how much time it has saved you or how it's made something better. But it's important to think about that before you implement it. How are you going to actually measure it? How are you going to find out whether this is useful for the organization or not?
Yeah.
Um, all of those are great places to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think measuring things, even, as I'm sure you saw with your Power Platform and Dynamics kind of consultancy, it's very difficult to measure kind of the time, at least for me, very difficult to measure the time saved, the optimization, the efficiency. You can say that these technologies are providing that, but where's the evidence when the financial planner comes down and says, why are we paying for all of this? Where's the document where you're going to pull out and say, this is why? Yeah, I think that's super key. You mentioned something that honestly shocked me when I joined the corporate world, which is bad data. It is everywhere. A lot of companies have bad data and they want to adopt AI before they fix their data. What do you say to those companies doing that, and how can they go about fixing their data?
Just don't waste time and money. Just fix your data.
Yeah.
Fix your data before you put AI on top of it. So it uses AI. AI uses data to give you answers. If what it uses is rubbish, the answers it gives you is rubbish, which means the value you're going to get out of it is a lot less than if you had better data. So the important thing to remember is that you need to have a good enough amount of data and good quality of data for your AI model to get trained on, and you need to continuously check that the data that it's basing its decisions on is good enough,
Yeah.
and also to have that human review as well, particularly if you're looking to use AI to actually drive anything. You need to make sure that there is a bit of a human review of, is the AI doing the right thing? And in the future, we're going to have AI models that are looking at whether AI models are doing what they're supposed to as well, like guardian agents.
Yeah.
Is a term being thrown around at the moment, because there does need to be an element of checking that the parameters within which an AI model is supposed to work on, it's actually still working against them. And you see people trying to hack AI models all the time to get them to do things they're not supposed to do, and so on. So there's definitely an element of that will continue to be the case. But if you don't fix the data, you need to be prepared for really weird things to happen
Mm.
and for suggestions to be made that potentially don't make sense or are even harmful. So there needs to be that acknowledgement that what you are basing it on is a little bit broken and or maybe biased or incomplete, and therefore what it gives out will be biased and incomplete and might lead to wrong things. So it's you need to go into it acknowledging the risks you're taking and then monitoring against those.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's always been about data, and I feel like for the longest time it will always continue to be about data. So valuable to companies, and companies just don't have reliable amounts of it. Areti, you've done a lot of kind of community work. You've started the Reading user group. You've, presented at multiple events. I guess for people who haven't put themselves out there, because people come to me all the time and, ask me, how can I start putting myself out there? What are kind of some of the benefits that you gauge from doing more of that community stuff, more of that public speaking stuff, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, as you've mentioned? What are some of the value that you've got from that?
So I have gained a huge amount from it. I love the Microsoft community, and anytime I get a chance, I say to people, you should come to an event, or you should come to a user group, or you should join it, or come to a conference. I love it because of a number of reasons. For me personally, being part of it, I've gotten to meet some great people that really know their stuff in terms of the stack, but also they are such a huge variety of people that have huge interests outside of technology as well, and they do so much. They're in their majority, they are very lovely, welcoming people that would love to see new faces, and love to see more people joining the community. And you do get the regular people that will always present, always come and talk, always want to, talk about the next big thing. But it's always nice to actually see people that we haven't seen before that come up and say, "Oh, I'm using the Power Platform for X, Y, and Z, and I wanted to see who else is using it." So the networking part of it for me is great because you do get to hear about great things that people are working on. You get to talk to them about the technology. You get to talk to someone that does maybe the similar role to you in another organization, and that's very interesting as well to compare perspectives. So I've seen people that have really had great conversations around challenges they face in their roles, or even between partners. We do obviously compete with each other, but when you actually get to catch up, you can just talk about the frustrations you may have in your role, or things that you're trying to overcome in a certain way, and there's going to be a lot of suggestions to that, or recommendations that you can get, which can make a massive difference in how you go about your day. So there's an awful lot of information sharing in general, technology wise or generally, that is very useful. Obviously, growing your network as well, it kind of opens it up for you to appreciate how much stuff is going on out there that you may not know about. I didn't know that there were Microsoft conferences until I joined one. I didn't know there were user groups all over the UK. There's so many events that go on, podcasts like this one. There is so many things that are happening, conversations that are happening around the products and the Microsoft community that it's great to be part of and also listen to as well. And you will always, most of the time, you will learn something new, which in itself is very, you will eventually get to meet people across all of the stack that if you have a question about anything, you know who to go to ask the question. So you yourself may not know everything, but if you have a question on a topic, chances are eventually you'll know someone who does. Or if you ask someone in the community, they will put you forward to someone, they will get you in touch with someone who knows. And that's very valuable in itself to have. So you get to meet some lovely people, but also the events themselves, the technology is changing so quickly now, and I find it very valuable to attend the events because I get to learn about what's changing and what's coming up, particularly kind of bigger events as well. There's a lot going on at the moment, and you can't possibly keep track of all of it across the stack. There's not enough hours in the day. So going to events helps keep up to date with the technology, see demos, ask experts questions that you have as well, and that's valuable. For me as a presenter at user groups and conferences, that's my favorite bit. It's getting questions from people because in preparing for a presentation, you learn a lot as well because there's an awful lot of
Mm.
hard work that goes into it. So that in itself is very valuable to me because I get to I get to prepare and learn and do a lot of research, and in that process, I learn a lot of things myself. But then the questions I get from people, or the insight that they share after the event as well, or during the event, that in itself is very valuable. You get some great questions, and it gets you thinking about the technology a lot more, and you see different perspectives of how things are being used. And I love it when people attend the session and they start talking to each other and answering each other's questions and having that conversation and sharing as attendees at an event. And I think that's great. That's why the community exists. It's to bring the users of the technology together and get them learning from each other and helping each other. So it's great when that happens as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, there is real power in having that network, knowing the people to go to for certain topics. Like you're never going to know everything about everything, especially nowadays. Like it's impossible. So, having those outlets, having those people to go to, I think it's so, so important. And I always like to ask that question with these podcasts, just so people can understand the value that it's brought the people that I'm speaking to, so then they can be encouraged to go and do it themselves. Areti, I have to ask this because I attended one of your talks, and you really know how to grab a room. You really know how to keep their attention. I mean, I definitely say for myself, my attention span isn't, very long. I have to be very disciplined in what's in my room, and you do a very good job at keeping people engaged. So, what advice would you give to up and coming speakers who want to gain that confidence, who want to start speaking at these events? What would you say that they can do to give them a jump start?
Thank you for the lovely feedback. First of all, I love it. It's great to hear it because I don't often know whether people are really listening or not. You
Yes.
always worry, are you actually engaging enough? Are the things you're going to talk about going to be interesting to people, or are they going to come away and give feedback that it was the most boring thing they've ever been to? I always try to make it engaging. I think the first thing that I would say to anyone who hasn't done public speaking before is don't worry if the thought alone terrifies you. Because for me, the thought alone terrified me. And I was very, very nervous before my ever first speaking kind of engagement at a conference, particularly. I was like, oh, good God. Um, it was nerve-wracking. And for me, the best way that I could get through that was to prepare. I think I presented that presentation to a wall about 10 times before I actually did
Yeah.
it in front of a room of people because I
Yeah.
just wanted to get comfortable and know that I knew what to say and I knew how it was going to flow and I had my slides ready. But then again, I'm a person that generally has to plan and prepare to be comfortable with what I'm doing. I know other people
Yeah.
that are preparing their slides 5 minutes before their session. I could never
I've
do
seen
that.
that.
I can't. It's just not me. That would just freak me out. I need to prepare. I need to run through it. Um, do what works for you is basically my advice, and figure out what that is. First of all, figure out what you need, what rituals do you need to get comfortable, to get ready. For me, it's planning and preparing and running it through. For other people, it might just be the adrenaline of getting it ready 5 minutes before gets them going. You have to figure out what kind of speaker you are because not every speaker is the same. um, I talk fairly quickly. So for me, one of the things that I had to learn to do was try to slow down, particularly when I was nervous, and really kind of think about what I was trying to say. There is also a great benefit to leaving space and leaving gaps, which I'm not very good at doing. So there's things like that you kind of get to learn by getting feedback and just get someone to, ideally the first time you do it, record yourself. Even if you're doing it in a room, that works really well. You get to watch yourself back, and yes, it's horrible, but do it because you will figure out what you need to improve just by watching yourself. And it's great. And even in PowerPoint, there is a presenting coach, and I found that very useful as well, because I tend to use a lot of filler words, a lot of ahs and and I'm not consciously aware of doing it. But then when you go through something like that, or when you video yourself, you can tell that you're doing it, and then you're so aware of it, and that's what gets you better as a presenter. Um, there's so many different ways to present. I think it's just if you have something you're passionate about, that's the most
Mm.
important thing. It's
100%.
don't self-reject and think, oh, I could never be a speaker. I've got nothing to say. It frustrates me so much when I go up to people and I say, oh, hey, you had a great feedback there. You asked a great question, and it sounds like you're using this in an interesting way. Would you be interested in speaking about that? I think you should do a session on it. Or, someone in my team is using a new tool in a really cool way. And I said, oh, you know what, it would be great for you to do a session on that. And so many people, like their immediate answer is, oh, I've got nothing to say. I couldn't be a speaker because I don't do anything interesting. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's rubbish. It's not true.
Yeah.
Like people are using technology in different ways, and you don't have to come up with the next, amazing way to use this. But even if you've got a small use case for it, just share it because it will help someone. Even if it's one person, it will help someone. And I think that's the main thing to get over is the I don't have anything to say. And a lot of the time I just say to people, if you had to submit something, what are you passionate about? What do you love talking about? What interests you? What excites you? Talk about that. Even if the thing that excites you is yourself and your career journey in tech, talk about that. It doesn't have to be necessarily technical. You could, some people talk about how they were an end user and they became a consultant. Some people talk about imposter syndrome and how they overcame it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a technical thing you talk about. It just needs to be related, and it needs to ultimately help someone,
Hmm.
or for you to have a unique perspective. And given that everyone is a unique perspective because there's no other person like each one of us,
Hmm.
we all have something to share. And it's just about figuring out what you're passionate about, what can help people, and just talking about that. And you don't have to submit to humongous conferences to start off with. You can pick a small regional user group. Like my one, for example, in Reading. Other user groups are available, but we sell. We we give you great pizza at mine.
Love it.
Um,
Love it.
so but start small. Don't go for the big bang because that's very intimidating. Like start
Mm.
small and grow from there. And also, you don't have to do it alone. A lot of people assume that they have to do their sessions alone. I guarantee you, myself included, if you go to anyone in the community and you ask them whether they would be willing to present with you or look at your session description or anything like that, or brainstorm ideas with you, they would gladly say yes. I've still not to this day had anyone in the community that I've approached for something that has turned me down. And I don't think
Mm.
it's got anything to do with me. It's just that they love to help people. That's kind of, the Microsoft community is all about people giving their time for free to other people to help them. So the chances of anyone turning you down is minimal, basically. So they may be busy, they may not have much time, but what time they have, they will try to give you and help you out. So that's my advice as well, is think about whether you could do your first presentation with someone else that's more experienced that you can learn from, that can support you in the room as well, because it's less intimidating that way.
Yeah, I love that. That's some great advice, Areti. Thank you. I mean, that definitely helps me. I think one thing that also helps me kind of on top of that is, I don't know about you, but when I feel super comfortable, I think you mentioned it, when I feel super comfortable and confident and, confident at least in what I prepared, I feel like I can do a much better job, and the adrenaline, even though it's there, it's a little bit less. And interviews and presentations and those sorts of things that kind of get your blood rushing. I always love to, I think, not making it a stand-up comedy, but getting that first laugh, getting that first kind of impression gives you a glow of confidence, gets you comfortable with the audience. I love that generally. And I think another thing I would say is, you don't have to do it in person. I like doing it in person. It's a different experience, but you can do, or start off with a webinar or something. That's something I did. Gives you some initial confidence, and then you can take that in person. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on it. But yeah, no, you are genuinely so good at it. So I appreciate you giving that advice in general. Um, and everyone has a story, right? As you mentioned, everyone has different backgrounds, different experiences, and that gives me an amazing bridge into your background, Areti. So I always like to get a little bit personal towards the end of the podcast. So you grew up in Greece, and then you studied at Warwick University, which is, quite prestigious in the UK, I would say. So what was that experience like? What was that transition like? Why did you decide on the UK?
So I decided on the UK because I had spent all of my summers in the UK, even though I was from Greece.
Right.
So my family's history is my dad used to be a doctor. He's retired now, and every summer we would come over to the UK for a couple of months because he was working as a effectively a holiday cover
Mm.
at in Birmingham at the Heartlands Hospital.
Ah,
So we spent all of our summers in Birmingham when we were growing up,
interesting.
which was very fun. Yes. I personally loved it because it wasn't as hot as Greece. Greece can get very hot in the summer, and actually any
Hmm.
chance to escape that heat is very, very welcome
Right.
when you're living it, for 11 months of the year. So I loved the fact that it was a different country, literally. It was there was a lot more variety in the UK and particularly Birmingham than you would see in Greece or in Athens where I lived. There were different people, different foods, different cultures, and I loved the fact that we could come and be in a different country for a few weeks every year in the summer. So it felt like home. It didn't feel like I was going to be going to a different country if I decided to go to the university in the UK. One of the reasons why I wanted to go to the UK and study was purely because the education system was massively different to the Greek universities, and it appealed to me. And I wouldn't say that Greek universities are bad because there's some great universities in Greece that do amazing work. But generally speaking, I personally at least felt like the UK was a nicer, it fitted me more culturally, and also I felt like the education system was a lot more formal and less
Hmm.
political because in Greece the education system in universities can be very political institutions. And I just felt like that wasn't for me, and I felt like I should have a go and try and achieve that because it wasn't easy to do it. I was very lucky as well that I had a private education when I was growing up, which not everybody does, right? So I appreciate that I came from a very, very privileged position that not everybody does. So I did it because also it was an option for me, and it's not for everybody. Um, I worked very hard to get to the university that I got to. Um, Oxford and Cambridge were a bit too intimidating for me, so I didn't go for it. And I do not
Hmm.
regret that because Warwick was a lovely university. It was a bit of a culture shock when I
Hmm.
first came to the UK because in Greece there isn't as much of happy drinking culture as there is
Right.
for freshman year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Freshers Week was a bit of a shock to the system for me. Let's put it that way. Um, Not that I was much of a drinker, and I wasn't much of a drinker during my university years, I have to say. But I was just shocked by the pure amount of alcohol that people could
Oh
drink.
yeah.
That was
Plenty.
impressive, plenty. And it was great for me because it was a campus university, so it felt like a little bubble.
Hmm.
Um, and there were so many things to do. I got involved in so many societies. So photography is one of my hobbies, and I got involved in the
Ah.
photography society. And I ran that until I left. It was just lovely to just be able to do so many cool things and just be in a nice part of the world as well, and still be in the Midlands, because work universities between Coventry and Leamington Spa, and it was just a lovely experience for me. But at the end of 4 years of being there, I was done, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
get out into the real world. And I had academically, I was saturated, and I needed to go out and get a job and live my life and be in the world. So that's what I did.
Yeah, awesome. And like, what was the next step after Warwick? By the way, Warwick is a beautiful campus. I'm not
Oh
sure if it,
yeah.
I'm not sure if it like has changes, but it definitely does. But I think I went last year in around September time, and beautiful. Like you said, it was like a bubble. Like I went to university in a place called Portsmouth,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, and it's a city university, so it's like
Mm,
really broken in terms of
buildings are.
the buildings are
Mm.
exactly. But yeah, Warwick was like a nice bubble. But yeah, I mean, in that sense, what was the next step? You mentioned you lived in London. Was that the next step after Warwick?
No, as it happens, it wasn't. So I did my degree was in management, and
Hmm.
I did a lot of different modules in during my degree, and I really I really wasn't ever sure what I wanted to do in my life. I
Mm.
wasn't sure I wanted to do management either when I went to university, but it was the one thing that came up in my career guidance kind of questionnaire answers. My answers
Hmm.
pointed me either to engineering or management, and my math skills are not great at the best of times. So I thought, what,
Mm.
engineering is probably needs a good mathematical basis. So maybe I won't do
Right.
that. Maybe I'll go
Hmm.
for management. Because I loved also psychology growing up, and what makes people make decisions and things like that. That was always something that I was always interested in. What makes people what do people think about? How do they think about it? And is it, can you influence it? And if so, how? So that was fascinating to me always. But I went for management because I thought I could see myself being in an organization, funnily enough. Um, and I thought I will go and do that. And I did a lot of modules on marketing and product placement and ethics and all sorts of things. And
Mm.
I thought that marketing was the thing that I wanted to do. So I did a master's in marketing and business strategy, which was very interesting. But halfway through it, I realized that I didn't actually want to I didn't want to do marketing. I was fascinated by the psychology around it, but I wasn't as excited by it as other things. And I thought, oh God, I'm doing this dissertation on marketing products and how competition affects how you perceive a product. And that was great for me. I loved the research of it. And I did a great dissertation. But at the end of it, I thought, I got offered a PhD on it because it was a great
Oh,
topic. And I had this decision to make whether I wanted 3 more years at university or if I wanted to leave. And
wow.
that was very difficult because I loved the research and I could see myself staying for 3 years, but I had done 4. And I thought, you know what,
Yeah.
I got a bit, I just needed the change. I'm the kind of person that moves their furniture around every so often just to change that, just to have a bit of an element of change, changing things up. So the fact that I
With
was there
you.
for 4 years with another 3, I was like, I've done it. I know this campus inside out. I've walked everywhere
Mm.
multiple times. I've been here for 4 years. I need to get out of the bubble, as lovely as the bubble is. So I decided to turn it down. But I was looking obviously for jobs, finishing my master's, and I
Hmm.
applied to a lot of marketing placements, and I didn't get into any of them, probably because they knew that my passion wasn't there for it. Something
Right.
obviously gave it away,
Hmm.
even though I tried very hard. So I was looking for other roles to apply to, and one of the roles that came up was this IT support specialist role, and I thought that was really cool because I was working obviously during my university years, part time. There was a small company close to the university that was looking for an IT and marketing manager. So I did that for the last kind of 2 years of my degree and the year of my master. So I had kind of 3 years of work experience, which was great for me. I was managing the website, I was taking photos of the products, marketing them online, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In a very basic, noddy way back then. So I had that experience and I decided to go for that role. And that's what led to me, to a certain extent, doing what I do now. So looking back at it, I was sad that I was getting rejected, but at the same time, I think it led me to a different path that actually fitted
Hmm.
me better. So it's funny how life works out, as they say.
Yeah.
But when I was looking for those roles and I found that position was in Milton Keynes, of all places.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I ended up moving to the land of roundabouts and I was there for about 5 years before I then moved to London.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
crazy. It
Yeah.
was strange being in Milton Keynes for 5 years, but I
I
loved it.
love
It was
that.
great. Yeah, had
Yeah.
fun.
No, that's super interesting because, like, all of the places you've kind of been, as you said, I've heard here, I've been, and I haven't been to too many places in the UK. Like, I lived in Birmingham for a year. I grew up in London. Now I'm in Portsmouth, but I have a friend in Milton Keynes, so I go there often, and it's a nice city. I like it. Super chill. Not like London though. So,
I
what
think super
made
chill
you?
is right for Milton
Yeah,
Keynes. Yeah, it's a
I'd
super
I'd
chill place. Yeah.
I'd say so. So
Yeah.
at least compared to London. So
Yes.
what made
Yes.
you want to move to that monstrosity that I wanted to really get out of when I was growing up there? At least for me. I have a very love-hate relationship with London. But yeah. How was that for you?
So is it? Are you asking about London? How was it going to
London
London? Yeah.
specifically. Exactly.
Well, having been in Milton Keynes for 5 years, I think you decide that you want something like London because,
Interesting.
especially when you're young-ish, you do want that experience. I think
Yeah.
everyone gets pulled from. For me, it was a chance to work on work in a bigger organization, the potential for a better career as well, experience. That was the main thing that pulled me to London,
Mm.
and just having that experience of living there. There's so many cool things happening in London. Yes, it can be very frustrating and overcrowded and extremely expensive, but that was part of it for me, was the career advancement, and also the fact that my older brother, was moving back to London from Greece,
Mm.
and therefore I had a chance to live with my brother for a few years, so that was really
Oh,
nice.
cool.
So
Yeah.
we lived together for a while, which was really good. So that was a great
Awesome.
experience for me as well.
Yeah, no, I love that, and yeah, I mean, like I said, I like to get personal in the end. I like to get to know the guest a little more. But we've gone over the hour, Areti. I always like to end with this question. You've seen the other podcast. I'm not sure if you've seen me ask this question, but it's around happiness. and I'm always curious what happiness means to my guests. So I'm not sure if you've had to think about it, but what does happiness mean to you?
I think for me, happiness at the moment is really related to my daughter. She's about to
Mm.
turn 5 soon, and she's the person I love most in the world. And the thing that makes me happy is just hugs from her or any kind of affection from her, which is very an
Mm.
affection. She's a very affectionate daughter. I think for me that is happiness. Whenever if I go away for a trip or if I go away for a couple of days or I'm away for a little bit, um, you know, she will always be so happy to see me and me her obviously, and just that the fact that you have this person in your life that just you are their world, they love you, they think you're the most amazing, greatest thing that could ever exist. Just having that in your life by default makes you extremely happy. And also
Mm.
it's very, it's a very rewarding thing as well to know that you are um allowing this person to exist and grow and develop and be who they are, and being their parent is a great thing as well. That makes you happy, knowing that you are capable of looking after another human being and keeping them alive, and they love
Yeah.
you, actually you're doing great, and that in itself makes you happy. I think if I didn't have my daughter, what would probably make me happy is making other people happy. Helping other
Mm.
people is extremely rewarding to me, so I think that comes very close second. And a lot of the things that I do kind of community wise is because of the fact that it's extremely rewarding to be able to help other people. Um,
Mm.
so for me, that is definitely something that makes me feel very happy is when people come up and say, "Oh, hey, this was useful," or "I saw this thing and it was great," and I was able to do this. And if we can help at least one person in our life, it's been worth it, I think. So for me, those two, I would say.
I love that. I love that answer. Yeah. I feel like that's what we got put here for as people, as individuals, as human beings. Like, I let's get very philosophical, and question, why we're here. And I feel the most purposeful when I'm helping others, 100%. And, I don't have kids, but I can only imagine what that feeling is like. And maybe one day that is the dream. But everyone I've spoken to that does have kids tell me that their perspective on life completely changes as soon as that day comes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, would be
I
super
mean,
interesting.
the only thing I would say is, of course, kids are lovely, but they have their drawbacks. So let's not romanticize having children as well, because there's
Right.
a lot of things that come with having children as well. But
Understood.
there is yeah, there is yeah, everything in a balanced view, I think, is
Exactly. Right.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
100%. So to summarize, have kids, but not anytime soon.
If you're young, get your bucket list out of the way before you have children,
Right.
because then it does change your life, not for the worse, but it
Mm.
does change it. So it's being very aware of how your life changes when you have kids, I think is important. So talk to your friends that have kids and ask them to tell you honestly what it's like, because a lot of people just go, "Oh, it's the most amazing thing ever," and it's like not all the time. Let's be honest.
I
So
love that.
yeah, I think that's yeah. Know what you're getting yourself into. Generally, is good advice.
Love that, Areti. Thank you so much. And I think that's an amazing way to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your transparency, as per usual. And thank you at home for listening to this podcast. If you liked it, Areti, sorry, I like to roll out the red carpet just for these final 2 minutes. Where can the people find you? Where can they connect with you? What do you have going on?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Please connect, follow if you would like updates on Microsoft community things in the UK, general artificial intelligence, Dynamics 365 Power Platform updates. I've got a website as well where you can register to receive newsletter updates. So when there's a blog post out, you'll get a notification on it. So you can register to receive that. That would be lovely if that is your thing. And generally, otherwise, Reading user group once every 3 months. I'm there. You can find me there. Any kind of London user group event, I try to attend them as well if I can. And conferences wise, Dynamics Minds happening at the end of May. That's my next kind of big thing. I'm at the South Coast user group as well in April. South Coast Summit happening in October, and of course the Scottish Summit next year. I'm on the organizing committee, so maybe I shall see you in Edinburgh next October as well.
That will be amazing. It will be a pleasure. And thank you so much for your time. All of those links will be in the description. And Areti, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather, for having me. Lovely to speak to you.
My pleasure.